Hello Year 5 and 6, how are you guys doing? Last week we learned about palm oil. I received some fantastic letters. Very, very persuasive, very informative. What I'm going to do is I'm going to print those letters off and I'm going to post them to the Prime Minister. I feel like he needs to read them. They were excellent. Lots of work that went into those letters. And it's something that is definitely going to help the environment in the long run. This week, we are learning about rewilding. Now, rewilding is essentially planting more trees, more plants, and putting animals back in the wild. Now, thousands of years ago, before deforestation, we all know the earth was covered in forests. And in those forests, there was lots and lots of wild animals. Now, there's not as many forests, and there's not as many wild animals. Well, there's charities across the world that want to plant more trees and put more animals into the wild, making nature around the world more vibrant. I really like this. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant idea. And eventually, it will help climate change, which is also a great thing. Now, as you look through the slides, there's a couple of videos for you that explains a little bit more detail of rewilding, and they're very, very interesting. And there's one place in England called Bristol where they're trying to reintroduce bears and wolves into the wild. How cool is that? So it's a working project, and it's not going to happen overnight. It takes years and years for it to happen. But that is fantastic, isn't it? There's also a place in Scotland where I show you on the slides where before these charities got involved with rewilding, it shows you a picture of a place. And it's not very many trees, it's not very green. And then 16 years later, once they've planted lots of trees, put more wildlife in the place, you can see how green and beautiful it looks. And they're hoping to do that in more and more places across Great Britain. Now, it's not just animals we need to think about. We also need to think about insects. Insects are amazing creatures. I find them fascinating. And we're going to think about one insect in particular, and that is the honeybee. Now, the honeybee is in danger. More and more honeybees are dying. There are less and less honeybees across the world. And partly because of that is due to climate change and the world getting hotter and plants blooming before they were supposed to bloom because the world is getting hotter. As we know, these plants and flowers are the bees' food. Bees go from one flower, and there's a thing in flowers called nectar, which is like very, very sweet, and it's the bee's food. And on the bee's back, it collects pollen from that one plant, one flower. Then it goes to another one, and the pollen on the back, on its back, a bit like Velcro, gets transferred from one flower to another. Now, when that flower receives that pollen, it then creates seeds. And the seeds fall into the ground and grow more flowers. How cool is that? And that's called pollination. So honeybees pollinate trees and flowers. Now, without honeybees, this is a very interesting fact. There's lots of foods that we wouldn't have. The honeybees, they pollinate coffee, apples, peaches, watermelons, tangerines, blueberries, cashews, almonds, walnuts, apricots, aubergines, grapes, peppers, kiwis, pears, avocados, strawberries, mangoes, and cucumbers. So if we didn't have any honeybees, we wouldn't have any of those foods. If I'm honest with you, I I don't mind if they stop pollinating cucumbers. I don't think they're very nice. As we now know, honeybees are very essential for the environment. And we want them to stay safe in our country and in other countries. Now, when bees go from one flower to another, then to another, and then to another, and then to another, and then to another, it's very, very tiring. They need places to rest. And that moves on to our first activity. Activity 1. What I'd like you to do is design a bee hotel. Now, it's not like a beehive. A beehive is where bees live and they produce honey. To design a beehive, I want you to design a bee hotel, which can fit in any back garden, where bees just go for a bit of rest, or to just leave a little bit of food so they can come back. So leave a bit of pollen and a bit of nectar so they can come back and go, ooh, let's have some more food. I've given you some examples of some bee hotels. I'd like you to design one of them. I'd also like you to think about what materials you'd use. Now, would you use recycled materials? Or would you buy the materials from a shop? It's down to you. Moves on to our second activity. Our second activity to do is design a bee garden that can fit in Lenton Recreation Ground. Now, Lenton Recreation Ground is round the corner of the Abbey campus, not the Highfields campus, the Abbey campus. And I walked there the other day and I thought, wow, this place is very beautiful, very big. It's got places to play. It's got a basketball court, which I really, really like. I end up playing there a few times. But I was thinking there was something missing. Now, what I'd like you to do is design this garden where it's going to be very beautiful, very vibrant, lots of different colours, but also you're selecting the flowers and plants that bees really like. Now, there's a slide with all those flowers. You can include as many of them as you want, but I want this garden to be really beautiful. I've also added a picture of an example of a bee garden. In that bee garden, you can include your bee hotel. Another good thing about designing this garden for Lenton Recreation Ground means that lots more people will go there. I hope you enjoy this task. I was very, very excited doing all the research for this task, and I'm looking forward to seeing all your designs. Now, with these designs, what I'm going to do with those designs is I'm going to send them to the council as a suggestion. And hopefully we can get a bee garden just around the corner from the Abbey campus. Have a lovely week.